Phillipsburg Land Use Board meeting, October 27th, 2022. This is a discussion regarding the Elks building on South Main Street and final site plan approval. There will be 31 apartments. The general comments from the public were mostly about the lack of parking. Based on the occupancy, the public expects that there will not be enough parking and it will cause problems for folks who have apartments there and the general public.
75 and 83 South Main Street, Block 911, and Lot 7 in major site. No, not you.
Yeah, right. Can sing this one, Wayne too. It's your lucky night. All right, well, good evening, everybody. For the record, Mark Peck with the Florio Prucci Law Firm on behalf of the applicant, R. Amos Real Estate. We're here for preliminary and final site plan approval for property located at 75 and 83 South Main Street, which is the former Elks Lodge building. Before we proceed, I would like to note that we were deemed complete at last month's meeting and that we've published and served the necessary notices and provided the affidavit to Kelly. So the board does have jurisdiction to proceed with the application. Property itself is at lots 7 and 8 in block 911. It's in the riverfront redevelopment area, specifically the RRA2 riverfront development zone, and it's part of the Union Square Subarea 3, Main Street in particular. And the applicant proposes the adaptive reuse of the vacant Elks Lodge building with commercial or retail space proposed for the first floor, and then 31 1-, 2-, and 3-story apartments, bedroom apartments above that, which is consistent with your redevelopment plan. And tonight to discuss this proposal, we have architect Jessica Margolis of Eclectic Architecture. She's the project lead as well as the architect. And we also have Wayne Ingram of Engineering and Land Planning as our site engineer. And I'll also note that we've received and reviewed the Van Cleef October 25th review letter, which our witnesses will be discussing, but wanted to represent that Section 3, Subpart 3, which is the final site plan checklist part of the letter. At pages 8 and 9, there's 3 recommendations for conditions of approval, which is O, showing details of all points of vehicle ingress and egress to the site. Q, is a list of site improvements. And R, copies of all applicable permits. Those are all acceptable to us as conditions of approval, should we get that far. So without any further ado, I'd like to call Jessica Margolis, our first witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you will be the truth, the best of your ability?
Okay.
And state your name and spell your last name.
Jessica Margulies, Margulies.
Attorney needs to figure out how to pronounce your name, right?
I thought I did that. That's what I said, right?
It's a tricky one.
We'll mark her CV as A2 because Mr. Ingram's CV is previously marked as Exhibit A1. I had an opportunity to review it, and I would recommend the board accept her as an architectural expert.
Okay, well, apparently I'm going to play Jessica. So, can you explain to everybody, now you've been accepted as an expert, can you explain your background with like historic preservation and adaptive reuse of historic buildings?
Sure. So our firm is Eclectic Architecture. I'm the co-owner with Michael Margulies, and we specialize in historic preservation. We are the architects for the Roseberry House, as well as a lot of other historic properties, Warren County, the tour of homes. We are the ones organizing that, which is happening on November 5th and 6th. We do adaptive reuse regularly. We did the adaptive reuse of the GlaxoSmithKline Valentine Farms into a global conference center, but we also do pure historic preservation. In this case, it's adaptive reuse that we're proposing.
And what is it that we are proposing? Could you describe the current conditions and what we're looking to do with it?
Sure. So we first presented this project to council February 4th, 2020, right before the pandemic. And 2 years ago, yesterday, we started the approvals process for this wonderful project, the Elks building. It's from the 1920s. It is an adaptive reuse where we are proposing that there'll be a mixed use of retail on the first floor on the street level, and then market rate apartments throughout. This building has been called the crown jewel of Phillipsburg. It is perfectly suited to have views of the river and the Free Bridge. It's a gorgeous building. It's been left abandoned for quite some time, and we're proposing to give it new life.
Don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. A1, is this page one of, sheet one of the 4 sheets for the
Yes.
plans?
Mhm.
Should we mark this?
Yeah, please. That'll be A3.
A3.
Thank you.
So what we are proposing, first of all, there is a governor's mansion on the hill that we are not touching. We're not doing anything to that project except it will remain as a 2-family. So that's 2 of the total 33 units we are proposing for this property. Within this building, this 5-story building, we're proposing 2 stores on the street level and 31 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartments. As I said, they're going to be market rate apartments based on our market research and the rental activity nearby. They're primarily 2 bedrooms, which seem to rent best for this location. The idea is to bring young professionals to South Main Street, retirees to South Main Street, and bring new life to this area after hours. So one of the things that was asked to testify on is the number of units per acre, if we're in compliance with that. And the redevelopment plan states 32 units per acre. This is 1.03 for the lot and an additional 0.177 at the other lot. If you add those 2 together, that's 1.2 acres times 32 units per acre, that would be 38. We're requesting 33. Or if you just base it on the one lot, the 1.03 times 32, that would be 32.96 units per acre. I mean, units for this property. Another question is if we met for the minimum requirements for square footage, which we do for the amended redevelopment plan. Our smallest 1-bedroom is 472 square feet, the smallest 2-bedroom is 617 square feet, the smallest 3-bedroom is 919 square feet. But all of our minimum sizes exceed the amended redevelopment plan. On the first floor, we have, we are very, very minimally changing the exterior because we love historic preservation and we want to keep this building as it was. So the only areas on the street side that are getting renovated are these 2 infilled windows, which were not original to the building from our documentation. We are putting doors in them, so these will be the entrances, doors and glass, to the 2 retail spaces. The center door will be access for the residents for their mailboxes to come through the main corridor. There is an existing elevator that goes to all the floors, so this will be handicap access to all of the apartments. On the first floor, we mainly have the smaller units. So we have the 1-bedrooms, the smaller 2-bedroom, and then we have this community space for the residents, whether it's a gym or just a gathering room, and some storage units. On the second floor, these units have this beautiful terrace, which everyone will be able to access that lives in the apartment building. We have mostly 2 bedrooms on that floor. On the next floor up, we have this beautiful glassed-in area. There'll be 3 apartments that'll have access to that area that overlooks the river. On the second floor, we have 1 3-bedroom unit and 7 mid-sized 2-bedroom units. On the third floor, we have 9 mid-sized 2-bedroom apartments, 3 of which I mentioned, have the fantastic views of the river. On the 4th floor, we have 6 mid-sized 2-bedroom apartments, and then we have 3 larger bi-level apartments because there's a little strip of 5th floor. So these apartments have their living areas on the 4th floor, stairs up to their bedrooms on the 5th floor. And we believe that this project is perfectly situated in an area for economic growth. for the town, and we hope that it'll be a catalyst to revitalize the surrounding area. The only changes to the exterior we're proposing, other than those two doors I mentioned, you can see over time that they've infilled some of the tall windows. So we're proposing another set of windows on the sides. We're not changing the front other than what I've mentioned. And on the other side, where it's mostly solid brick, we're proposing some additional windows so that there's windows into the residences and on the back side as well.
So does that conclude your direct testimony?
Yeah.
Very good. Does the board have any questions for Jessica?
Tim does.
Based on your preservation background, do you find that your proposed improvements have any impact to this district's National Historic Registration?
No, it should not. The only area, like I said, on the street side is where it was infilled over time. If anything, we will be repairing what needs to be repaired. The building will be used and preserved in that way, and it'll remain this beautiful focal point for the town.
And does the existing apartment building in the rear conform with the square footage of the zone?
The governor building on the
Correct.
hill? Yes, you mean the units themselves?
Unit size versus number of bedrooms?
I don't know that because I do know that there's it's a two-family house. But we haven't surveyed it because we're not doing any work to it whatsoever. It's completely existing.
Okay, thank you. That's everything I have, Chairman.
Do we have enough parking spaces there? Thank you.
Well, we're going to have Mr. Ingram, our site engineer, discuss
This
that.
was just on the early presentation.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the building, you said it's part of that, that blue, one with the blue siding on it there, right? What are you gonna do with that building?
As part of the design, we were going to tear down the building to the south side and then use that for additional parking.
Good idea, thank you. I think it's a great project.
Thank you. Does okay.
Anybody else, any questions on the building itself?
I just had a couple questions, like fire escape, but I don't know if that's the time to do it or not. I don't see any fire escapes there.
Well, we are going to be doing the complete, code compliance renovation as part of the permit process. It's also going to be fully sprinklered.
Right.
Just to elaborate on that, as an architect, you're able to provide a certain number of interior egress points that
Yes, will comply.
would reduce the need for exterior fire escapes at a building like this.
Yes.
Helps your question
Yeah,
along.
very good.
Because, yeah, they could
Do they have
definitely get
rear
an
access
exterior,
to the
could
building?
add to the,
Rear access.
Rear access, yes, there are doors to the rear. It exists, but right here. We're leaving the internal spine, and it is a wonderful building if anyone's had the opportunity to go in it. It has original Bethlehem steel, giant beams in it, and it was the Elks Lodge, so the third floor was where they all met, and there was a stage. But it's designed to have a fourth floor, so that's what we're going to have to be putting in as part of the project.
Next witness.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to call Mr. Wayne Ingram. And Wayne has previously been accepted as an expert by the
We swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth to the best of your ability.
I do.
Thank you.
And should we mark this
A4.
colorized rendering of the site plan?
Thank you.
Okay, so Wayne, you prepared the plans
Yes.
for this project?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you describe the site plan?
Sure. So So again, you've had a pretty good lead-in. This is a site that, from an exterior perspective, not really a whole lot is taking place because much of the improvements exist. As was discussed, one of the things we're doing is removing the structure here on the southern end of the site, and what we were proposing to do was install 7 parking stalls in that area. Parking seems to be the primary concern, as the comments brought up by your board engineer, rightfully so. One of the concerns with this parking is the steepness of the slope heading to the street, which unfortunately isn't something that we can control because the street, exists at the slope it is. There's adjacent structures, not much we can do there. But if the concern is to reduce the number of, in those steepness, what we could propose would be to rotate the stalls, reduce them, and point them into the, there's kind of like a horseshoe here, so that they could back out and come down, which would allow us to raise the grade there a bit. It would pull us back from the intersection to 25 feet, which I think would resolve one of the variance conditions that we had. It would reduce our parking a little bit, but they would be more compliant than they currently are. Another area of concern, we had a couple parallel stalls here in the existing parking lot. And the question was, how we have access to the one closest to the bus stop. What we can do is we can shrink this island here a little bit and give them a little more space, but we didn't want to remove the stalls because they've been existing, all this time. They're already pre-striped. It's not something we're adding, though I think if we can add a foot or two to the stalls by, pulling it back a little bit, that should only be a benefit, but the vehicles are getting in and out of it now, so, why fix what's not broken? There are some other concerns with, vehicles that back out into Pleasant Avenue. We're not, proposing to change any of that. It's not a heavily accessed, lane. It's narrow, but we do have a couple stalls here, which are all existing. All of this parking is existing. They may still back out into those areas. Again, they do some internal circulation once they back up a little bit, but they are using the roadway of Pleasant Avenue to back out of those spaces. That would be proposed to continue. What I could say is that, whatever this reconfiguration that we do up here to reduce the slope, these stalls will back up internally to the site and not out onto Pleasant, which should be an improvement over the current plan, in spite of the loss of a few stalls. Another comment which we'll address in revised plans is with regard to the lighting. It was suggested that we, rather than just maintain the lighting that was out there, we look to modify it to get better coverage and more compliance, which we're amenable to doing. There was a concern with the trash enclosure and its proximity to the residents. Our concern was really how trash can get picked up here. Due to the narrowness of Pleasant Avenue, we have to make sure that the trash is accessible to trash trucks. We didn't want to put it in here. There's no room for the trash truck to circulate. Same thing with the existing parking lot on South Main. We could attempt to move it further into the property, and try and come up with an alternate configuration that maybe moves it, closer to the rear building. That would really be the only thing we could do because, again, I think a vehicle is going to somehow need to turn in here and come in a very narrow roadway. It was suggested that we, could add curb and sidewalk to Pleasant Avenue. I don't know that that's accomplishable. It's kind of narrow, and we don't really have the room without sacrificing further parking. We do have a parallel stall on our lot, again, centrally located here, which would not be able to exist if we try to improve that. And given the slopes, I don't know how many people are using that, for pedestrian access anyway. When we first submitted this plan, I don't know that the EV charging rules were in effect, but since that time and since we were deemed complete after, I think we mandatorily have to provide EV charging compliance. Based on the number of parking stalls, that would necessitate that we have 6 EVs places installed, one of which would have to be at an ADA stall. we will agree to comply with that. Because we are deficient in the parking, for the standards on site, it's not going to, reduce our number, but it will reduce the demand, the numbers that we had to meet by an equivalent number. So, our requirement would go down by 6 stalls. By our calculation, we believe that 74 spaces are required for the lot. A calculation of that's provided on our plan. I think there was some discussion about whether the RSIS standard for half the space being associated with visitor parking was something that was added onto the site. It's been my experience and the opinion we've discussed with DCA that 0.5 stalls is built into the RSIS standard. It is not a separate standard. The intent of that was basically if people were building garages like at a townhome and all their parking was in garages, you need to provide additional space because if you park in the garage, your visitors would have nowhere to go. But in a situation like this where all of your parking is exterior, you don't have that consideration. So there's no additional demand from that. So currently this plan shows a 59 where 74 were required. The 74 would be reduced by 6 with EV. So our requirement, in my opinion, would be 68. Though we are noting that we're going to probably lose 4 or so stalls in this area to facilitate the improvements to reduce the slopes and access onto Pleasant Avenue with the new stalls. I think the intent again was to have any of our deficits met on an as-needed basis with the with off-site municipal parking where I believe permits can be obtained. I would further say that using RSI standards is obviously what's required, but what we're seeing in a lot of developments in areas such as Phillipsburg, when you have these kind of redevelopment projects, a lot of towns, also especially in affordable housing projects, are using a reduced standard of about 1.5 stalls, per unit, which would drastically reduce what the demand of the site would be. And if you use those calculations, we have compliant parking. So I only say that by virtue of pointing out I think the parking we have here on site is sufficient for the use. I think you're in an area where you have access to public transportation with a bus stop. It's highly unlikely that that a predominant number of people occupying this building are going to have 2 vehicles. With those other options available to them, and at the end of the day, if it seems like all the parking spaces are accounted for and there's nothing available, chances are a tenant's just not going to occupy the space. We were not proposing to make the parking resident use only because I think the retail is going to be offset in terms of peaks with that parking. So, during the day when, everybody goes to work, we would hate to say that you can't use the parking for the retail businesses. A suggestion we had, if the board, would like to see it is, adding like more of a restriction of putting a sign up, residential parking only between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. or something like that, so that you can ensure that when people come home from work, they have a spot. But during those daytime hours when clearly the residential demand is going to be reduced, that it provide opportunity for the retail tenants to have people park nearby. I don't think we have an issue with our ADA locations. Another concern here, and again, this looks nice in plan view, but I think what doesn't come through with it is the grading. So we have retaining walls here. We have a lot of a significant grade change. It's not really able for us to make this one interconnected improved parking area. The grades just simply don't allow it. It's the grade of Pleasant Avenue. It is quite steep. So we are, I believe it's an elevated building. We have, where we have our ADA parking provides access to the site. And while, in our plan, the dumpster is located distant from the structures, if we were actually to move this dumpster down here, it would actually be further from the residences because they can't just walk from here to here. They got to walk around the wall and come down. So, you know, we thought putting it in this area was the most accessible location that we could find for it. You know, just to make a statement, we don't believe this project will result in any substantial stormwater impacts. Again, all of this impervious for the most part is already existing. You know, where we're proposing to add parking is already occupied by a home. And I think if we, you know, by modifying this, as I've discussed, will probably be, you know, nearly equivalent in impervious to what is already out here. We're certainly a minor project. We're not changing the flow paths, you know, adding any, you know, stormwater structures, changing any directions, and we're happy to have a letter to that effect. I would also, one of the questions raised was whether we are merging the lots. I think that's probably the most prudent thing to do here. We are not going to be seeking a variance, you know, to have this parking lot property just be the primary use of the lot. So, you know, we can merge those together, you know, to eliminate that concern.
Yeah, and that could certainly be a condition of approval if we get that far.
And we really don't object to any of the engineering comments made. You know, these are all changes that we certainly can amend. You know, in terms of staging, we're not really concerned. Again, all this is really existing. The only area we're modifying is the demolition of the structure and the parking. But, you know, we have a parking lot here already, which is basically, you know, our ability to stage. You know, all the other utilities and everything are in. You know, this parking lot's here, this parking lot's here. You know, other than some restriping, conduits, you know, things of that nature. There's really no reason to, you know, impact the off-site area. Certainly agree to upgrade all curbs and sidewalks, verify our sewer connections, provide replacement street trees, you know, any fire safety comments, you know, addressing fire hydrants needs with the fire chief. All of that is certainly acceptable, you know, to us, and you know, to the extent that there's any existing easements that can be identified or easements that are requested for utilities, none were uncovered, but you know, we're happy to, you know, provide any you know, that are needed. That's essentially all I have.
Very good. Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Ingram?
So the board, part of our review letter we prepared, we provided concern with the parking that would replace the existing dwelling structure. The slope was 13.5%. Once you get over 5%, it becomes problematic with car doors and stuff. The applicant, by removing that building, was going to enable providing 7 more parking spaces. However, the functionality of those spaces is questionable at that slope. If they're going to be able to modify that space to get to 5% or within the town spec, that would be reasonable. But to try to back out of a space that's 13.5% into an alley that's less than 15 feet wide, you're going to have very limited sight distance. So to try to, it's a bit of a concern on my side to permit a parking configuration from that. If removing the dwelling provides them to reconfigure the existing parking lot behind them that is not as...
That's your foot?
You kicked your farm.
not as steep of a grade. Maybe there's a balance there between removing the building, providing a little bit more parking up towards the top of the spaces. That would be our recommendation, and to try to squeeze as many spaces in that may not function as well because of how steep the road is and how steep the parking space is. It'd be very much of a challenge in the winter to get out of a parking spot with 13.5% just balance and not putting a car door into the adjacent car.
And we don't object, and that's why I say, I think what we'll do is we can take these 3 stalls, rotate them so that they back out into the site, and that'll level, you know, if we have to put a little wall or something to level them, we can do that. It removes the variance for our proximity of the driveway to the intersection variance, you know, and eliminates that concern. And again, removing the dwelling also reduces the demand for the site by 2 stalls right there. So it's not as many as we're proposing. It would take us down to 54, but you know, it's really the best we can accommodate in the site.
It's actually,
You're not suggesting removing the dwelling on the hill, though?
no, the dwelling on the hill is not being discussed. It's the dwelling on the corner that's
Yeah.
under the plan. just because it seems that that one's being removed to accommodate the grade parking spaces. Potentially, if the grade can be adjusted, and if there's an unusable space, potentially making that into some green space or ground cover plantings to work with the aesthetics of your development.
Yeah, it would give us a green corner, and we can, certainly add some landscaping there that we don't currently have.
The other concerns in our review letter had to do with the proposed location of the dumpster. As they testified, they're trying to find a balance between parking and access. We would encourage the board to try to place the dumpster further into their site than closer to the adjacent existing residents that wouldn't be making use of the dumpster, but would have 33 apartments worth of trash and plus 2 commercial spaces clustering next to their house. As part of the redevelopment plan, there is provision that doesn't trigger a variance should they not have enough parking on site that they're able to develop or obtain parking through the parking authority.
Yeah, we understand that.
And then for the sidewalk for the sidewalk along Pleasant, if they're seeking relief from installing that, they would need to confirm that with the town council for the town code. It is a narrow road. Potentially, if a sidewalk goes installed, you can provide a little bit more connectivity from the residents beyond Pleasant to South Main, and can provide connectivity to the parking they're proposing, but I'll leave that up to the board if they find a balance. It does provide additional parking without the sidewalk being installed. And that's the highlights of the technical concerns that I had in the letter. Thank you.
And just to say, I would estimate we lose another 3 to 4 stalls to install the sidewalk.
So maybe consider to try to, if the board finds it reasonable not to install the sidewalk to accommodate those 3 to 4 spaces, which would be similar to, would be in line with the existing conditions out there. It is a paved surface.
It's more of an alley than a street.
Correct. I didn't know it was a street. I thought it was a driveway.
They're all quasi streets anymore. Anybody else on the board have any questions for you?
Where, with Tim's comments, were you okay with it?
Again, other than
He
as
said-
discussed and modified, we agree to all the other
Yeah,
concerns.
so everything he said, we're okay with.
Okay, so what permanent waivers we're looking for here?
So most of the waivers that were left
Before we
were,
let's ask for public comment.
No, hold on, yeah. But permanent waivers, I'll
Oh,
just clarify
okay.
permanent
All
waivers.
right.
again, most of it I think will comply with what we've testified to tonight to satisfy them. We would request, a waiver from locating features within 200 feet.
Give me the
It's under 2B. I assume 2D, a letter about the stormwater would be sufficient.
As a condition of approval, yes, that would be acceptable.
A waiver of 2F, again, for features beyond what we've already shown. I think we've gone about 50 feet beyond, which I think is sufficient for the use. Again, hoping that the 2G is satisfied with our testimony and what's been provided, and the changes that we intend to make for circulation. 2J, we would request waiver from any additional profiles of existing roads. Under 3K would be it's the same as the earlier one, conditions within 100 feet. And that's about it. All the others, again, in my opinion, have been provided in testimony or will be complied with in the revised drawings.
Do you concur, Tim?
Yes, I do concur.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Now we'll go to, board doesn't have any questions, we'll go to public comment. Stand up. State your name again.
Robin Co. Donaldson, 44 Perlman Road, Stewartsville, New Jersey. Okay, so I've always had a vision for that particular spot, and I think it would be a great public-private investment to look at a parking deck. And since you have an engineer and an architect here, maybe we could get an idea of whether that is something that is possible, especially since they took the blue house. They're looking at taking the blue house down. You can't park there because of the incline. That's a perfect ramp up to go into and around the building onto the parking deck. And if you could build that back into the hill, you could probably get a couple of different layers and pick up a lot of parking spots, which would be so beneficial to that area.
Robin, you have a couple million?
Yeah. Well, I think if the town, I bet Mary Jo could find us something. She's really good at it. I'm sure there's grant money out there somewhere. That would help us because we do have a.
Between the
parking lot.
catfish.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but this is the time to do it. I mean, you have a project on the board. It's the time to put it out there to partner up with someone trying to put in 31 apartments. That's my thoughts. I always thought in my head that that blue building was definitely the stumbling block. I always said if you took that out, you could go right around that building. So, just something for you guys to think about.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, sir.
Kevin Kaiser, 563 South Main. Think it's a great project, I just think it needs to be downsized. Remember, we have the weed dispensary, no parking. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, there was another one that asked for a variance. They want to put 4 units in, I think it was 37 South Main. They have no parking. They're saying everybody wants to park behind Jimmy's Jimmy's hot dog stand. You know what, we need to stop, downsize. It's a great, just downsize it. We'll have parking. You know, you have the bar room restaurant across the street, no parking. Where are we gonna park them? The Delaware River's not gonna take them. So I think the board needs to think about it.
Anybody else?
My 2 cents, Audrey Frank, 276 Bowling Green Drive. I guess I'm supposed to do that. I just want to say that obviously I know Marguerite's family, and also I'm just thrilled that we have them working on that project. So I just want to give her a thumbs up for that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So, Mark, let's clarify the park, and Tim, let's clarify this parking variance thing for me, please. So, we're looking for a variance for from the number of parking spaces, correct?
Correct, and I believe that number was 74 is what the ordinance would call.
Right.
So you're seeking all the spaces that you need, or are you gonna obtain them through the parking authority and not trigger the variance?
Well, I guess it's a variance for however many, you know, whatever the deficiency is, and one of the mitigating conditions for that variance would be that we'd have to obtain, you know, and any tenant that can't obtain, you know, parking there, we have to have a permit for it.
And one of the difficulties is, you know, specifically for the retail component, you know, it's based upon a number of employees. Well, we don't know, and, you know, we don't necessarily know the number of employees. You know, so to the extent that we know where we're at, you know, it would be nice to, you know, just have the variance, you know, because again, based on my testimony with the 1.5 multiplier, which again, I do think is, you know, adequate for a project like this, we would actually meet what's required on the site. You know, and it's just, you know, I think we have the ability to get additional parking permits, you know, on a year-to-year basis. but a variance would provide us some ease in regulating the site. I think a site like this is gonna be somewhat self-regulating. I've seen it a lot, I just did a 20-something unit apartment with no parking in downtown Washington. They provided some, off-site at a rate of 1 per unit, and it becomes self-regulating. People can't get a stall, there's nothing available because it's known to be full by the owner who has a property manager. It just may not be the right space for that person. If they have 2 cars, they can't accommodate. That's something that's unique about residential compared to commercial. You can't control who comes to commercial, but for residential, it will self-regulate a bit better.
And 59 is your number?
We're at 59 now. The change that was Mr. O'Brien's requesting will cause us to lose 4 to be down to 55.
And if we address Mr. Kaiser's concern about maybe scaling down the property size,
I think that affects the financial viability of the project.
and there's
We, in the planning of this, we went through many variations with different size units, different numbers of units. That number was the minimum amount that was viable for this developer, who has been waiting eagerly for 2 years to put quite a bit of money into the town of Phillipsburg. So that's his goal.
All right, and then on page 11 of Tim's letter, letter D, we're looking for variance there as well.
I think, as I said, I think that we will now, if we remove these stalls and rotate them, we will be 25 feet from the intersection of these streets, so that variance would disappear.
Okay, thank you.
Keith?
yeah, good.
You know where I stand about parking. We have to address parking downtown. And that was an excellent proposal. What the woman made. I don't know if it's doable, but I think it should be looked into.
I would just say in regards to a parking deck, I don't see it as it's just not, economically, I don't believe it is, but, it's much more complicated than you think because of the way you have to design a parking deck with the ramps, the widths, for circulation through it. If you look at, unless you plan to remove this building, it's impossible.
Okay.
You don't have the width, and I also think from a historic aspect, doing something like that around that would really compromise aesthetically the property and these 2 buildings we're trying to focal point.
I agree. I just, we have, the town has to address parking. This is one more project's going to come in, you have to pop carry it, and anybody else is going to be shut out. They have no place to park. It's not fair to the other property under the building.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to get people come in and put stores in or whatever. There's no place for them to park. It's a hindrance. We have to do something.
One final point I'd make to that is, forget what's proposed and look at what you have. If you take the lowest intensity parking, demands you have for a site, or anything that would be a viable use for this property, those type of uses will probably be even more deficient with what's there now. If we remove this building, it's a residence, there go 2 stalls required, and we're adding 3. So we're net 5 more stalls than can exist here today, and our demand is probably no different than if this building got fully occupied with a conforming use.
And if we applied the standards of like the Easton downtown district,
It would be
because
compliant as is.
this would be fully compliant. So,
We're New Jersey.
For what it's worth.
We're not PA, we're New Jersey.
Understood, but it's,
Yeah,
apples to apples.
this is true.
Are we still in public comment?
I don't know, I'm just thinking, maybe it's time to start charging the developer and build up a fund so we can put a parking garage someplace, sometime.
Yep. Yeah. There it is.
What else is there? It's an astronomical cost, and the town can't afford it. Sometimes, we're gonna have to figure out how to get income in order to build a parking garage somewhere. I don't know, maybe we should start charging the developer to build up a fund.
Yeah, you, One more?
David Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. In regards to parking, Chairman Zwicker, we do have some people that have a little bit of expertise on parking availability. And I believe Mayor Tersigny and Councilman Kennedy have been very involved with the parking ordinance. And I think there's some limitations in terms of permits. I don't know if they can vote or talk about the project, but they can talk about parking in general, I assume, correct?
Most of that parking limitation on permits was geared towards Riverside or the lot for the ramp. There's other parking lots close to this up where they used to park before. You know, like where the train is, that's still a parking lot. You know, that's accessible to this building. In the same distance as walking to the Riverside Way, probably even closer.
Yeah, it's from the Elks building.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Where the old Second National Bank, where Market Street, there's a lot there.
Okay, a private
So
lot.
they could technically, you know, use those permits there, where when you hear most of the parking, you're talking about Riverside Way is what you're commenting on, that the limitations go.
Right, well, they have permits in the other lots too, I believe.
Sure,
Is
so
that
there's
correct?
other adequate parking that's close to this, it's other uses.
Oh, okay, I was not aware of that. Okay.
There's 2 more parking lots up behind this. You know, you got the one going up Hudson Street, you got the one going to Hudson Street, sorry, you're right. But there's 2 other lots. So I mean, it's a walk. If somebody wants to go in there and they end up selling the units and there's no parking spot, that's where they have to go. That's something else. You want to come back?
Yeah, I was just saying, because you're saying these lots. Where's the trains? Where's that train they're leaving out? So where's the people gonna park?
Well, they bus them. That's an event. That's a different
They close them parking lots off.
Then they bus them.
Right, but where are they gonna park if you close them off?
There have parking spot is open to the people that live there. If you want to go to Hudson Street or you want to go to that.
So you're telling me, and I don't mean to be smart.
No.
We have a parking lot. Thomas the Train is all set up.
Mhm.
Excuse me, you have to take this booth down because my I need to park here. I have a permit. Let's miss this way. There's no parking.
Well,
Come on.
It's limited, but there is.
I'm gonna end it with that.
Okay. We can disagree on that.
Yes, but you'll vote for it.
Yes, I will.
Screw the residents again.
Anybody else? Sure. Name and address?
Sean Donahue, 102 South Main Street. I live across the street from this one. And even though we moved here 4 years ago, we're very excited about the future, I guess, of Phillipsburg, but it's been very slow to come. And even though we're excited about this, we have a lot, like you said, to discuss. It's too big. The building is fantastic, 31 units. I am a little bit involved in construction. I'm sorry, but the units are small. The biggest unit you have is about the size of a 3-car garage. It's too much, and then we build in the whole parking. And if we truly believe that you think that this is going to be the crown jewel of our time, we're also excited about the riverfront development, 196 units there, I think was proposed by Mr. Parucci, right? So if that lot is sold and we build there, where's the parking? Where's the parking? Where's the parking? Even though we want all this to happen, and I've invested an awful lot of money in Phillipsburg, and I'll probably never see it back. But if this goes ahead and the others don't, realistically, I'll never be able to leave this place because I'm so upset that we've invested so much and it's just tumble. We have to start looking at the developers. Yes, there needs to go a parking deck somewhere. There needs to go a parking deck behind this building or a part of it And he needs to step up and put, as you said, Mr. Reedy, money into the building to support the parking. The building was barely $1 million with 30 apartments. Come on now, it's time we need to change that.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Close to public comment?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Zwicker. Understand parking is tight. It's tight in any, this is basically an urban area, the downtown, and it's tight anywhere in New Jersey. It's a problem, but this is consistent with the redevelopment plan. We need that kind of density to make it a viable project. There is transportation available in the form of public transit, bus stop, right adjacent to the property. And again, if you were to apply, not sort of the suburban RSIS standards, but rather, apply kind of the more urban standards that they use in places, Hoboken and Somerville, places like that. The parking is entirely consistent with what you see in other urban areas. So again, it is, but the most important thing is it's consistent with the redevelopment plan. And it's, if this isn't granted, I don't know that anything would be developed at that site. And this is a way to preserve this historic building and inject some good residential uses in that part of town. So thank you again for your consideration.
I would say,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
perhaps
Public.
And I gave everybody plenty of time, I really did.
So.
We'll take a vote on the variance, the parking variance first.
We're gonna take the parking, the 3 spots like you had suggested.
Well, that's what I'm trying to nail down. Help me out here, Mark.
We're going to lose 4. So I believe we're at 55? 55 at 74, which is what the ordinance.
And are you going to lose any with the trash enclosure relocation, do you anticipate?
So right now, there's 2 parking stalls, which again, back out on the street. If we're all acceptable with leaving conditions as deficient as they may be for all the existing spaces, we'd be putting those back and we can just relocate it somewhere in this line here, so it should be
The
a
2
2
moves.
swap.
Yeah, it's an even swap.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so a vote on the variance to the parking variance. As set forth in the Ford engineer's letter as modified today.
All right,
So we solicit a motion on that.
rather repeat that, I need a motion for that, if that all makes sense. Well, as chairman, I'm going to make the motion, because I believe in this project, and I also believe that we have to.
Oh, hold on, you can't comment.
I
You gotta
can't
get the
comment.
motion, you gotta get the motion seconded.
All right,
Then you
sorry.
can talk. Does anybody want to second Mr. Zwicker's motion?
All right, Bernie's going to second. Can I comment
Now you can comment.
All right, my comment on this, and I grew up here the same as you did, but we have to be concerned about going forward. We can't think about having 3 cars to a household. The people that are going to come into this building are not going to be somebody who's going to have 3 cars. They're going to come in and go out. These apartments are small. They're not meant to have kids. This is what Easton has. You can look over Easton. Everybody talks about parking. You can't park in Easton because everybody's in and out. They have events, they build parking garages. If we have a major development someplace else, then we're going to need a parking garage. But we can't think about our life being 3 cars in the house and everybody's just going to walk in. And we're going to need to get on a bus, get out, come in, go back and forth. and young urban people making money, bringing jobs to town. I'm sorry, I really believe that we need to look forward, not in the window, not back views. I'm sorry about that, that's how I feel.
Anybody else on the board
Yeah,
want to
any other
comment?
comment? Kelly, roll call.
Mr. Rooney?
Honestly, I can't vote for this.
That's right, Marty.
Until we
No, you don't comment.
really address the parking.
One person at a time.
Or something come up.
Good,
I'm not voting for the variance.
good.
Mr. Brossman?
Yes.
Mr. Hanistak?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Councilman Kennedy?
Yes.
Mayor Tus-
No.
They can't, that's right, to recuse yourself. Chairman Zwicker?
Yes.
Okay, that's.
Thank you.
Hold on. No.
There's more.
Just the variance, no, locked in.
You can see some motion on the permanent waivers as to items 2B, 2F, 2J, and 3K in the board engineer review letter as modified.
Permanent waivers for the board engineers.
Permanent waivers as noted in the board engineer's letter 2B, 2F, 2J, and 3K.
Need a motion?
Motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Who's first, who's second?
Hannah second.
Mr. Hanistak and Mr. Brossman.
That's right. Any comment? No comment, go ahead.
Mr. Rooney?
Permanent waivers.
I can vote for the other way.
Yes or no, Brian?
Yes.
Oh,
Mr. Brossman?
Yes.
Mr. Hanistak?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Okay,
And
and
Mr. Zwicker?
Yes.
then you vote granting preliminary and final conventional site plan.
Need a motion? Preliminary and final site plan?
I'll make that move.
John? Second?
Second.
John Turnbull.
Discussion.
Any discussion on this? Kelly?
Mr. Rooney?
Yes.
Mr. Brossman?
Yes.
Mr. Hanistak?
Yes.
Mr. Penrose?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
And Chairman Zwicker?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your consideration.